Bookaholics is a safe place for reading junkies who obsess over books, authors, bookstores, book news, and book trivia. We'll nerd out with book reviews, author interviews, our habit, and other bookish things. Here is your host, Deirdre Pippins.
Hi, Bookaholics. This is Deirdre Pippins, and today we are talking to Timothy Stuetz. He is not only a writer of children's books, but he is also a modern-day philosopher. So stay tuned as we talk to Timothy after this. Hi, Timothy. Welcome to the Bookaholic Podcast.
Aloha, Deirdre. It's wonderful to be with you and all the listeners.
Yes. You say aloha, so I assume you're in the lovely Hawaii.
I'm in the lovely Spain, but aloha has many meanings and carries many blessings. So that's why I use aloha.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So something that I didn't talk to you about before. So you live in Spain?
I do. I live in southern Spain right now.
Oh, wow. I love Spain. I've only been there once. My son was doing a study abroad in Valencia, Spain, back in 2019. So at the end of his program, we were like, okay, this is our time to go to Europe. So we joined him in Valencia, and then we went all throughout Europe, Barcelona, Rome, Capri, Monte Carlo, Paris, London. So we did a whole thing. It was wonderful.
It sounds absolutely wonderful.
I love it. Well, let's get to the heart of the matter while we're here today. And I saw from your information, you were once a CPA and now a children's writer. How did you go from one extreme to the other?
Well, there was an intermediary step where I owned a chocolate shop because I woke up one morning and the first words out of my mouth before I was even awake were, if Hershey's can make chocolate kisses, I can make chocolate French kisses. So I designed a product and ended up having to open up a chocolate shop in order to make it. And it was in that chocolate shop that I received a large box one day that I did not order.
Oh my.
And I opened it up and there were 50 little teddy bears staring at me. The delivery driver would not take it back. So being a CPA and loving Hardy Boy mystery books, I found out who really owned those little bears. And they were generous enough to give me the whole box.
Oh, wow.
And I carried one of them with me in my car. He rode shotgun, and after a couple of weeks of being with this bear, I picked it up one day and just said, "Who are you?" And he said, "Poet Bear." And that made sense to me because I wrote love poetry at the time. I wrote philosophical poetry. So I put my poetry along with some inspirational quotes from Christ and others in a little book, packaged it in a box with the teddy bear, called it Tales of the Heart. And when I got the whole package together, my mom took one look at it and said, "You blew it. That should have been a children's book." And I gave my mom a copy of the book because she hadn't read my poetry and said, "There's not even a line in here about children, let alone for children." But my mom really knew me, and somehow those words planted something deep inside of me. And 6 months later, the idea for the first children's story just appeared full blown in my mind, and I started writing.
Wow. That's a wonderful journey that you just took me and the listeners on. A lot of people, and I'm saying this because I'm going to try to parallel this to also your writing. A lot of people would have seen that box of teddy bears, and you tried to at first return it to the correct owners. And all of these things. And then when they said you can just have the whole box, you could have just said, "Oh, I don't want this box. I don't want anything to do with this box. I'm just going to give it all to the local, whatever it is, Goodwill, or donate it to a children's hospital, or whatever have you." But a lot of people, what you did, you took that as a possibly a sign or a journey, and you just took that on when you took the little bear to be a grown up, and you took the bear to ride shotgun in your car. That tells you right there that we're still very in tune to your inner child.
Very much so. And writing all these stories for the past 40 years has made me even more in tune to my inner child and
Yeah.
opening up to the gifts the universe wants to flow through me into
Mhm.
stories.
I really believe, and I'm only mentioning this again because of also the other portion, the other component of your journey, very philosophical and spiritually guided. That if we would just listen, if adults would just listen to our inner child, that child has not gone anywhere. That child is deep inside of you, and that child is your truth. That child is your truth. And if you just call on him or her or they or them, they'll tell you what you need to do. Bring out your wildest dreams that you thought were so wild at the time, but they can be accessible. And another thing you point out is the message that your mother gave you. Your mothers know you as much as we all go through this period of time where we're against our mothers and against our fathers and all of this kind of stuff. They know you. And yeah, I was told a similar message from my mother, who has since passed.
Mm.
But yeah, they know you. And so you'd be wise to pay attention just a little bit.
Yeah, my mom could, if there was some sadness deep inside me that I really wasn't in touch with, my mom would be able to look in my eyes and actually say, there's something that you need to get in touch with.
Yes, yes,
she,
yes.
she she knew, and she was in tune that way, and lovely gift. And yes, that little child inside of us, by bringing our hands to our heart and
Hmm.
connecting with our breath and remembering
Yeah,
that little child and visualizing that child and asking what its needs are. And it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go along with everything we hear that child wanting, but
right,
it's a matter of being acknowledged, something that
right,
a lot of us weren't as a child. So I mean, I can
right.
go inside and ask my inner child if it wants this piece of cake, which based
Of
based on
course.
my body right now probably wouldn't be real good, but I can at least ask. And then if it says yes, I'd like this piece of cake, I can share, well, it really wouldn't be healthy for this body right now. Do
Right,
you
right.
still want this piece of cake? And I will listen. If that little child says yes, I will know that there's something on a bigger level than my physical health that's going on.
Yeah, yeah,
So I'll,
yeah,
I'll honor it. But at
yeah.
least that way we're touching in with that inner knowing that we have.
Exactly, exactly. Well, now, how do you bring your inner child and that inner knowing to the books that you write for children?
Uh, well, the other paths that I've followed in the last 40 years have been meditation and teaching Tai Chi and
Mhm,
Qigong and yoga and some
mhm.
energetic healing practices. So all
Yes,
of these different practices have quieted my mind along with
yeah,
God's grace. So my mind really only thinks when I want it to think, and it thinks what I want it to think. So my mind is really pretty quiet. And
wow.
that leaves it open to hearing all sorts of ideas. In fact, I
Yeah,
get way too many ideas about what to
yeah,
write in children's stories. And
yeah.
um, but over the 40 years, I've noticed that my own creativity has developed. And one of the things that children's stories do is it develops our creativity.
Okay.
So when children are read to,
Mhm.
you notice that their eyes are wide open. It's like their jaws relaxed, and it's like
Yeah.
all the wheels are turning up there, and they're visualizing what they're hearing in the story.
Right.
And I found out from Joseph Chilton Pierce, one of the foremost experts in human development before he passed away,
Mhm.
that the ability to create internal images is one of the highest achievements of mankind. And a
Mhm.
child's ability to create those inner images literally forms the foundation for their entire life.
Mm.
So when I realized that, I have a few of my stories that are fully illustrated, but most of them just have a beautiful cover illustration
Okay.
because I don't want the children seeing an adult's representation of a static picture on a page. I want the children to be able to feel and imagine and see what they might hear or feel or think what's going on
Mhm.
the page.
Mhm.
Plus, that creates space for whoever the reader is to
Right.
talk to the child and engage with them. So you're just not reading to them. It's like, wow,
Right.
what did you get from that page? What did you see? And then
Right.
the reader can also share what they might picture because all of our minds work a
Yeah.
little bit differently. And
Yes. Yes.
if a child can see that somebody else pictures something differently than they do, they can realize that we all have different minds, we all have different perceptions of things
Right.
because there's a lot of adults that don't know that. You know, if somebody doesn't agree with them, it's like, I don't want anything to do with you. Uh,
Right.
so yeah, so my books build in that basis of creativity and imagining, and
Yes.
even 2 years ago, um, I had hardly written any stories that rhymed. You know, every once in a while there'd be a few lines that would rhyme, and then 2 years ago, all of a sudden, I sat down to write a story, and the whole thing came out
Mhm.
in rhymes. And then every story I wrote came out in rhymes.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's kind of how I know that these stories over the 40 years are still increasing my creativity and my receptivity to growing as a writer.
Right, right. Well, so let me ask you, you mentioned and you mentioned a few times the 40-year span of writing books. So, and I know you just told us about 2 years ago, all of a sudden the book started to rhyme. But other than the rhyming, how have your books to children changed over the course of the 40 years?
Wow. I don't think I don't think they've changed at all, other than I'm just amazed that I can keep coming up with new storylines that don't overlap.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
you know, there so far I've written 88 stories and I have another 10 in the process of being written and more ideas laid out as outlines after that.
Mhm.
And as I go back and read stories that I originally wrote,
Yes.
I'm still amazed that I wrote them, that they came through me. You know, it's like they're new. You know, it's like
Right.
yeah, the information comes through me, the stories come through me, and then it's like I get a clean slate again and I get to start
Yeah.
over. So every
Yeah.
time I go back to read one, it's like, wow, this is pretty cool.
Wow. 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 That's amazing. So again, you have this 40-year span. Publishing has changed in that 40 years. So how did you get your stories out there in the early days? And how do you get your stories out there now?
This is the you know, even though I've been writing 40 years, this is the early days. It's like
Okay.
I, I have I've had two publishers over the year with signed contract. One with a signed contract, and then they went bankrupt and couldn't publish.
Oh no.
And then Unity Church decided they wanted to publish my stories, and we picked a story to start with. And after they had me do 6 rewrites, they sent me a note and said, we can't publish this because there's a BB gun in it. And the BB gun was in the very first draft they had. So it's like, why didn't you tell me that earlier?
Exactly,
Uh,
exactly.
so
Well, then
since then,
how can we access your books?
yeah, so since then I'm going to ebooks, and I've had a couple published by Balboa Press,
Okay.
which are on Amazon. But basically through my website, timothystuetz.com.
Got you, got you, got you. Well, we certainly will have all of your contact information, any social media handles, your website, and the podcast show notes, as well as the description box on my YouTube channel.
Oh,
Now,
thank you.
some of your stories, um, were any of them series? Because I know a lot of times people like series, whether adults or children.
I've divided most of the books up into categories.
Uh-huh.
Like there's a series for expecting parents and newborn parents,
Okay.
where the first book is actually the baby in the womb talking to the mom and dad, sharing some things they can do ahead of time to facilitate the birth and their development afterwards. And then it continues, it goes from like 0 to 2, and then there's a story from 2 to 4. I also have a series of breathing books.
Okay.
Um, I have a series of books on bees.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Well,
there's a series of books on developing your personal health and energy, heightening your energy. So yeah,
okay.
I have several series of stories that follow one right on top of the other.
Oh, wow. Okay. Sounds very exciting and interesting. Now, I was reading through your information again, and you speak about a reading program and how, what's one of the soonest times that a parent should start a reading program for a child. Can you give us some information, some feedback on that?
As early as 5 months in the womb, because that's when a baby starts to um, relate to the outer world,
Mm-hmm.
and
Oh,
the vibrations of the mother's voice are particularly important. So
wow.
it's been shown in various studies, and saints and sages for thousands of years, hundreds of years, have
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
shared that if you want your child to grow up to be a musician, play music while they're in the womb. If you want them to be a rock musician, play rock music. If you want it to be
Right.
something else, play some jazz music, or play play some Beethoven or some Bach. Um, and if you and read, Albert Einstein said, if you want your children to be brilliant, read them fairy tales. If you want them to be even more brilliant, read them even more fairy tales.
Wow. Wow.
And I think that's because Einstein knew that the imagination is what's important.
Yes.
So that
Yeah.
that child gets the foundation of using their imagination, which they'll be able to use and develop no matter what they do in life.
Right, 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 right. Exactly, exactly. Well, imagination, and as speaking of, helps you to solve problems. And again, like you were just saying, no matter what you do in life, say you're a doctor, but if you have that foundation of imagination, that can help you cure a disease or a condition.
It helps with lots of things. And again, it's an imagination plus being open and not having a mind full of chatter.
Yes, that's
For,
very important.
for
Not having
instance,
a mind full of chatter. 'Cause I mean, a bunch of adults can say amen to that, but you really do have to have an uncluttered mind. You really do have to have a way of clearing it. Well, speaking of that, give us some advice on how to clear a mind or how to help our children clear their minds.
focus on one thing at a time. So
Yes.
no matter what you're doing, be fully present. So like if
Yes.
you're washing dishes, actually watch yourself pick up a dish and put a dish down. Feel what the water temperature is like. Listen to the sound of the water. When you're not having to think about anything specific or focus on something specific. Pick one high vibrational word or mantra, whether it's Christ, Buddha, Krishna, Om Namah Shivaya, and just keep repeating it over and over and over again, because those vibrations of love, those vibrations of purity saturate our mind, and our mind's happy.
Yes.
It loves connecting in with our essence, with our soul. So
Wow.
once we just keep repeating those things over and over, eventually the mind becomes kind of quiet.
Wow. I think what you just said is very important because a lot of people feel like, let's say of Christian faith, well, the mantras and stuff, that's of another faith, and I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do, but that you just cleared that up. Anything could become a mantra, really.
Anything. I love my children. I
Yeah.
love my partner. I
Yes.
love me. It
Yes.
doesn't have to be anything religious. I love, I am.
Right.
Um, Anything that is really attuned with our truth
Mm-hmm.
will quiet our mind.
Mm-hmm.
And we
Mm-hmm.
can also use our physical body. So if we're walking, we can actually focus on what it feels like to feel each foot hit the ground with each step. So if I get up out of this chair and I walk into the kitchen, instead of thinking about what I'm going to do in the kitchen, I'm just going to focus at the bottom of my feet and feel myself walk into the kitchen.
Yes. Yes.
And it's
Yes.
the
Yes.
same
Yeah.
way with everything we do. If we don't have to focus on anything else, just be present to our movements, be present to repeating one loving phrase that we love, and people will be amazed at how quickly things will transform. I mean, it's not an instant fix,
Right.
but
Right.
it does start the process.
Well, I will tell you, Timothy, I'll say within the last, say, 20 to 25 years, multitasking was the thing. Oh, I've got all these tools and resources, and we do computers, phones, all these gadgets. Oh, I can multitask. I can do all these things. And after a while, we begin to see and hear stories of people who saying that multitasking is not the thing. It's one thing if you're baking a cake, it's in the oven baking, and then you're doing something else, or washing clothes, it's in the washing machine
Right.
and you're doing something else. But this all encompassing you doing several different things at a time does not work. And I was one of those multitasking people. And the way I healed myself from that is to say and to own that I'm not less than because I'm not multitasking. I'm taking it one thing at a time. And that has helped me so much. I get so much more done. I use a very structured planner to plan out, to say, all right, this activity is probably going to take me 10 hours. So I'm going to dedicate 1 hour today to that item and be focused on that 1 hour with that item and let it go into the next day that I choose to work on it for an hour or 30 minutes or whatever. But I try to live my life that way. And I will say I'm succeeding because that one thing at a time, a lot of people were thinking that might be slow, but it's not. It speeds things up and your quality is so much higher.
Boy, I was just gonna say that it speeds things up and the quality is much higher. I have found that myself, and you know, it's literally like, again, we're freeing up our mind, we're tuning into a universal flow,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
that universal flow knows what it wants to flow through us.
Yes.
So when we're not so busy multitasking and trying to get so many things done,
Right.
we allow the universe to flow through us. And like you said, we get more done and it's more quality. And I have been shown many times in my life that God knows what's coming.
Right.
Yeah, I actually left. I was walking through a parking lot, and I've been to this parking lot in this shopping center over 15, 20 years, 3 to 4 times a week.
Mhm.
I left the post office one day and found myself looking back and noticed there was an H&R Block tax office next door to the post office. I had never known that before. I mean, it just wasn't in my radar.
Right.
And as
Right.
I walk to the other end of the parking lot, a car pulls up, rolls down the window, and says, "Do you know where the H&R Block tax office is?"
It's right over there. I just noticed it.
Exactly. But
Wow.
that showed me that there was something in the universe that knew somebody was coming to ask me where that
Yes.
office was.
Yes, most definitely. Most definitely. And you see what you're saying right there is that if we would just pay closer attention to doing one thing at a time, or be still, or what's the other phrase that has been attributed to that? Well, there's a third phrase that I was thinking of, and I can't pull it up now. But if you do that, it unlocks a key. It unlocks a whole lot of things that you're just not thinking about. And it's amazing when that stuff is revealed to you. And you'll be able to begin to see the beauty. It's so easy to see the non beauty of where we are when you look at the news and see all these wars and rumors of wars and protest and all of these things. But you'll be able to see some of the beauty in life if you just do some of these things we're speaking of.
Not only see the beauty, but literally just say, that's not my reality. Okay.
Right.
My reality is if I hear something like that, like I specifically listen to the news for the intention of finding out what I can visualize different.
Yeah.
So if we all just say, no, we want everybody on this planet to be fed. We want everybody on this planet to have a home. We want everybody on this planet to have clean
Yeah.
water. We want everybody on this planet to have the right type of shelter,
Yes.
and use our mind power and our intentions to help create that. We would see a shift in this earth that is so monumental, so fast, if we would just use the powers we have to do that.
Wow, that's incredible. That is incredible what you just said. And I will be using that in my prayer journal
Mm.
to propel me forward. I love what you said because I'm deeply disturbed about a lot of things, but I'm deeply disturbed about the homeless problem in America. It is unreal. This is not part of the interview, as it were, but I'm just speaking freely. My son just moved to Los Angeles, and he's very blessed that he lives in a safe environment and a beautiful environment. But you can walk down the street a couple of blocks away, and then you'll see like this tarp tent of a homeless person. And I remember walking down the street one day. We're leaving a nice restaurant and had a great high end meal, and you walk a few blocks down and then there's someone who lives on the street. A young man
Mhm.
was outside of his tent, and he had a piece of cardboard and he was writing on the cardboard. And I was like, he shouldn't have to do that. He shouldn't have to live that way. He is a person in the United States, and he should not have to draw on a piece of cardboard out on a concrete in a major dirty city, and he lives in the tent right beside him. That's not cool. That's not good. That's not anything but terrible.
Yes, and using our minds to refocus on what we want, and
Yes.
not just go about our days and think, well, this is it, and this blah blah blah. It's like, no,
Correct.
I'm going to use my mind power to visualize what I want to see happen in the world, and I want to see beauty in the world and love.
Yes. 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 Amazing. I will be I will be doing that starting after this interview to reroute how I think about things. That's beautiful. Now, so back to the reading aspect in children. I do have one more thing to say, and it's kind of amazing that you also mentioned it in your information. But the oldest son that I was telling you about that lives in Los Angeles now, when he was little, he loved this book that myself and my aunt, who would take care of him during the day while we were at work, had to read this book over and over and over and over and over again. And it was one of the longest children's books and one of the most tongue twisting books. And it is Fox on Socks by Dr.
Oh,
Seuss. Are you familiar with that book?
no, I'm not.
Check it out. See if you can find it
Okay.
and just read through it one time. And the way it's written, it's like you pick up this cadence that you gotta kind of read it fast. And oh my gosh, this boy just loved that book. So what do you say, to parents who have that one book like, oh no, they're picking that Fox on Socks one more time? What do you say to parents that's got to read books over and over and over again?
I wish my daughter had picked Fox on Socks. She picked other books that were kind of dry and I really didn't like reading them.
Oh
And
no.
and I had not started writing children's books at this point in time.
Oh
I didn't
God.
I didn't know anything about children's literature or why children like to have the same story read to them over and over. But
Yes.
because she liked it, I decided, okay, there's a reason she likes this.
Right.
And she had taught me many times in life that she knew more than I did. So I I trusted her. If she wanted it read again, I read it again and over and
Yeah.
over. And later I found out from Joseph Chilton Pierce that each new reading opens up neural networks and cements neural networks within the child. So
Oh.
that's why they want the thing read over and over and over again, because they
Oh.
haven't fully gotten everything they can get from that story.
Oh. Wow. Wow.
And if it does happen to be something like Fox's Socks on Fox or whatever that was, um, the fact that children like rhymes,
Yeah. Yes.
rhyming rhyming stories have been proven to help children learn how to read faster,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
they can see the relationship between words too,
Right.
and
Right.
they're fun. So
Right.
when all those ingredients come together, then children will learn more.
Yes.
And it's also proven that children will learn. If we want a child to learn something, we can read them a story and they will learn more than if we sat them down in front of us and said, well, you should do this, you should do that.
Yeah. Yeah. True.
Because
True. That's very
they'll pick
true.
it up from the story.
Yes, yes, most definitely. I agree with that 100%. Wow, Timothy, we've gone in a lot of different directions in this interview, but I did want to give my audience a broader vision of you and what you do. And the fact that we talked not only about the children's books, but the point of spirituality, this point of clearing one's mind, the point of breath. We did all of those things because I wanted them to get to know you better and how all of this can relate together. So I think we've done that. And
Yeah.
I certainly appreciate you joining me today. And once again, we will have all of Timothy's contact information in the podcast show notes, as well as the description box on YouTube. Timothy, thank you for joining me today.
Oh, thank you, Deirdre. It's been absolutely wonderful to be with you. I feel all lit up.
I do too, thanks to your great advice. So thank you so much.
Thank you.